Right, yeah, so in this video, this is going to be part 3 of my series on costs, or how I'm working out my costs. So if you haven't already, if you look back at my videos, the first one I did was working out my fuel price per mile. It works out at about 12 pence a mile. Hopefully it's going to be slightly less when I get my new fuel card, get a better price. The second one was on my fixed costs. So if you look back, that's insurance, CX membership, all costs that don't change with mileage, just my fixed costs. In this one, I'm doing this one on probably the biggest cost going as an owner driver courier. I'd say after fuel. It's bigger than insurance, bigger than maintenance, bigger than tyres, all that stuff. And it's one that people tend to forget about. Quite often you'll see people that say, you know, I earned so much, my insurance was X amount, and I spent so much on diesel, therefore my profit is this. They always forget about the second biggest cost is the van or your vehicle, whether you're in a motorbike, on a motorbike, or whether you're owner driver in a truck. It's the actual cost of the van, or cost of the vehicle, should I say. And I'm talking here about depreciation. I'm not talking about maintenance, upkeep. I'm talking about what it costs to own a van over a certain period. So you'll buy the van or buy the vehicle. I keep saying, say vehicle. So you're buying a vehicle, and at some point in the future, you're going to have to sell that vehicle, either to leave the game because you decided you had enough, or you want to try something else, or more likely probably to buy another vehicle, just because vehicles don't last forever. As we all know, they wear out. So as I keep saying, the way I see it, and I think everyone should see it, as a owner driver courier, you know, it's your business. You're a business, even if you're just a one-man band like me. And you have to buy, you kind of have to have a rough business plan in your head. You know, what van you're going to get, or what vehicle, what kind of customer you're going to target, how much you're going to work, that kind of thing. And one of the big plans of that is, obviously you need to have a vehicle. When you buy a vehicle, you need to be thinking, how long am I going to keep it? When am I going to sell it? At what point? When is it best to sell it overall? So like with your own personal vehicle, I know my personal vehicles, I basically just bought a new car, or changed my car when I fancied a change, or when it was worn out and I had to. But it's a different ball game, you know, when you're when it's a business vehicle. So when I bought this van, I bought it new. I should say that what I'm talking about here is depreciation of the vehicle. So what it costs to buy, the difference between what it costs when you buy it and difference about when you're going to sell it. Purely that difference. So nothing to do with maintenance, nothing to do with fuel, purely depreciation. So the factors that affect depreciation are how much value your vehicle loses, things like age, condition, and mileage. I'd say the three main. So like I say, my plan is to keep this van for 2 years. I've worked out in my head and rough calculations on paper, that's when it'll be best to sell it. Condition, I try my best to keep it in as good a nick as I can going along, keep it clean. When I'm loading and unloading, try not to mark up the back too much, brush it out regularly. Obviously try not to crash into things. I have scraped the front bumper, which took a bit of paint off there, so I might have to get that fixed before I sell it, or it might just, you know, cost it a bit of value. And the third one, which is the biggest one for courier, an owner driver courier, is mileage. The more you use a van, the more miles you put on it, the less it's worth, as we all know. So bearing in mind, as a courier, probably do anywhere between 50 and 70,000 miles a year doing this kind of light haulage work in a short wheelbase van, doing mainly small van jobs and short wheelbase jobs, the odd medium wheelbase job. So if I work off 60,000 miles, after 2 years, it's going to have 120,000 miles on the clock. So I decided to sell it then, because it's just It's got its warranty up to 100,000 miles. I'm covered for most of it. If any, issues under warranty. I've had some fixed already, and kind of got one ongoing one. Yeah, so if I kept it for a third year, it would mean it would be on 180,000 miles. And after 180,000 miles, I think the value, from what I've looked as well on, as I'll show you later, how to work out what it's going to be worth in the future. If I kept it to 180, maybe a bit more, 1,000 miles, vans aren't worth nothing then. Whereas if it's got 120,000 miles on it, it's still got a fair bit of life left in it. Maybe it'll appeal to, a tradesman who wants quite a newish van, because it'll only be 2.5 years old. So I bought this van. It'd been registered for 6 months, but hadn't been used. It was a pre-registered van, so it's sat there for 5 months. So when I sell it, it'll be 2 years and 5 months old. Yeah, so it should hopefully appeal to somebody like a tradesman who wants a modern, newish van, just for the it looks good to customers and stuff. But maybe they're not going to do mega miles, like say an electricians I know, got electricians in the family, they'll just go each day to site, maybe to the wholesalers, don't do a great deal of miles in their van. So hopefully that's probably what will happen to this van. Maybe it'll get an easier second life once I've sold it. That said, a lot of the miles I do are obviously motorway miles, easy miles on a van. So basically, in this one, all I'm going to go through is how I work out what I think this van's going to be worth in the future, or 2 years from when I got it, so it'll be 2 years and 5 months old, and then from that working out that as a per mile cost. So I'm doing this per mile because how many miles are on a van affects how much value the van loses, the depreciation. But things like age and condition obviously aren't really linked to mileage so much. So you could just say, right, I'm going to do 60,000 miles a year, so each year it's going to cost me. You could add this to your fixed costs, but I'm going to do it per mile because it is affected by mileage, but not 100%. So if you're really clever, which I'm not, you could probably make up an algorithm that takes into account age, condition, and then mileage in some fancy mathematical equation that we're all hearing on the radio to do with all this COVID malarkey and algorithms and stuff. But yeah, I'm not going to do it that fancy. I'm just going to work it out how much the van is going to lose per year, divided by the mileage I'm going to do each year, and that'll be my per mile cost for vehicle depreciation. So that's me mumbled on for long enough. So I'm going to show you 2 methods. The first one works, the second one I was still going to show it, but it didn't really work out in the end, of how I work out what my van is likely to be worth when I come to sell it in, it'll be like late February, early March 2022 when I sell it. So not this year coming, the year after, because I'm going to end of February I had it a year, and I'll keep it for another year. Yeah, so these are the ways I've worked out how much my vehicle is going to lose over this time period. Right, so the first way to find out what my van is likely to be worth in 2 years is, what I've done is I've just looked online. So the obvious website is AutoTrader vans. Obviously there's others like Gumtree and eBay. I've looked on them as well, but I'll just show you what I did on AutoTrader. So went in, set your filter preferences. So I'm going to be selling mine when it's, but I would have had it 2 years, but it would be 2.5 years because it had been pre-registered for 6 months. So I'm looking at vans 2 to 2.5 years ago from the time now, which is October 2020. So I'm going to be looking for vans at a 67 plate or 18 plate. That's where I worked it out. So set my filters here, Renault Traffic, no price on a thing, year 2017 to 2018, up to 125,000 miles. That's high as it goes on that one. They're all 1.6s. This year, this model is the first of a 2 litres, gone back to a 2 litre engine. Wheelbase, long wheelbase, manual, yeah, they're all manual I believe. I'm going to add onto this one so I don't get minibuses and stuff like that, and taxis. I'm going to go 3 seats. I'll refine it a bit better. So 16 vans. Yeah, so that's all good. So it's 16 vans. It says, and then you'll get things up here. So this one here, it's the highest mileage one, 2017. That's just under 9 grand plus VAT. But that is the business, which is kind of like the base model. The one I've got is a sport, and it's also got the rear camera for parking, factory fitted, which is nice. So I've done basically just scroll through these, find one that is most suitable, and generally by looking, so that's a sport there, this one. That's like the lower power model, mine's the next one up. It's slightly different here because I had a 1.6 engine. Yeah, basically just look through these, look what they're going for in this thing, and work out what my van is likely to be worth in 2 years, or when I come to sell it. So it'll then be 2.5 years old. So I've looked through all these. There's no perfect matches, but I reckon looking at this, the actual sale price to a buyer would be 9 grand, between 9 and 9.5, I reckon it'll be worth. That's with 130,000 on the clock, say 120 to 130,000 miles on the clock. It will be 2.5 years old. It should be worth 9 to 9.5. So that is the first way of working out what your van's likely to be worth. Yeah, and another way is the one, if you find one that's the closest to the van I've got, doesn't matter about the mileage for this bit, you just find a van that's closest spec to yours. That's the sort of age bracket you're looking for. And some of these, like that one there, is showing a reg number. So if we were going to use that one, we could use a reg number off that one, but that's a business, so I won't use that one. This one here is a sport, so I could use the reg off that one. I didn't actually use that one, I used another one, but I could have used that one. And what you do, and this is the second version, second way of possibly getting your value, go to the likes of We Buy Any Van, use a number plate which you found is going to be like a good match for yours, so it's your type of model and it's currently the amount of age, the same age yours is going to be when you sell it, if that makes sense. Put it into the likes of We Buy Any Car. There's a few of them on there now. This is obviously the most well-known one, We Buy Any Car, We Buy Any Van. And the price I've got there is really low, 7,806. That's including VAT, because obviously I bought this van and I've claimed the VAT back because I'm VAT registered, and when I sell it I'll have to charge VAT on it, and then all that VAT's going to have to go back to the taxman, but it'll be less than the VAT I claim back. But that is ridiculously low. I know that's low because We Buy Any Van and stuff, they're looking for people, motivated sellers, people who need money quick. That's how they make their money, I think. So that's not what it's worth to if I part X'd it. So if I sold my van in early 2022, which is when I plan to sell it to a private seller, if I sold it myself, I'd get between 9 and 9.5. If I sold it if I traded it in, I'd probably get about 8, 7.5 to 8. Say 8 conservatively if I traded it in. Right, so now I've worked out projected loss of value or depreciation over the 2 years based on the mileage, etc. It's time to calculate what the pence per mile cost is. So van depreciation replacement costs, purchase cost, bought a van for 17,250 plus the VAT, but I obviously claimed the VAT back because I'm VAT registered. I'm on a flat rate scheme, so I can still claim back major purchases, so I claimed that back, which was nice. Projected sale cost, I've gone for 8.5 grand, 8.5k. In 2 years, we're about 120,000 miles on the clock. Projected depreciation is quite simply the difference between the two, the amount of value it's lost, and the amount of money I'd have to find to buy the same again. So projected depreciation, 17,250 minus 8,500 is 8,750. Length of ownership, like saying, I'm going to keep it 2 years. Depreciation per year is quite simply that depreciation value divided by 2 gives me 4,375. Projected annual mileage, 60,000 miles, maybe slightly conservatively there. Another high budget production here. Depreciation per mile is literally just that value in pounds divided by the mileage, which gives me 0.073 pounds per mile, or in pence, that's 7.3 pence. I'm just going to round that up to 7.5p a mile because maybe I've been slightly conservative with that mileage. Other things, I was best to round up slightly, never round down. You're just going to fool yourself. So that is the key figure, 7.5 pence a mile just to replace the van. So it's worth bearing in mind that is just to replace it. That's not even to get back the money my own savings I've got tied up in this van. I mean, there is something called return on investment. How many years before you get your investment back? So if I wanted to get my money back, say I wanted my savings back to, I don't know, put a deposit down on a house or something, or just have that money in the bank, it would be more than that. This is literally just the money to replace the thing, so I'm not losing basically my savings that are tied up in the van, which is quite a lot really when you think about it, and it's especially when you consider it's one people don't even think about a lot of the time. Yeah, so that is how I worked out my vehicle depreciation cost per mile. So I'll say again, that is literally just replacing a van at a certain point in the future. Nothing to do with tyres, nothing to do with general routine maintenance, repairs, MOT, anything like that. It's literally just what the van costs you to own, and what I need to earn to replace the van and not even get my savings back. So this is obviously if you're buying a van. Doesn't matter if the van's buying new or in second hand, you can work it out. If you're buying on finance, I imagine you can work out the same, what you're going to pay for the van including finance, and at the end of the finance period it'll be yours, so you just take away what it is when you're going to sell it. If you're renting a van, from what I've heard about renting a van, it doesn't really work out. It's a bit of a because of the limited miles and all these clauses they have in rental contracts, it's a bit of a no-go really for light haulage, renting vans, what I've heard. Not that I've looked into it much, but if you were doing it, you just obviously whatever the van's costing you to rent per year divided by the miles, that'll be really easy to work out. Right, so a bit extra to add. So if you watched the first video of this series, which is how I worked out my fuel cost per mile, you'll remember I worked out as about 12 pence a mile. Now I've got a decent fuel card, it's actually just below 11 pence a mile, so I'm going to work off 11 pence a mile. That's based off me getting 45 miles per gallon, which I tend to get quite often get a bit more, sometimes slightly less. So conservatively I go at 45 miles per gallon, and work off 11 pence a mile for fuel. And then you'll see from this video, part 3 of this series, is 7.5 pence a mile to replace the vehicle or vehicle depreciation. So that's up to 18.5 pence a mile. And he's obviously got other variable costs to go on there, which I'll do in the future. And if you go back to part 2 of running cost series, which is my fixed costs, it's like £17 a day, which covers insurance and things. Go and check out that video if you haven't. Yeah, so that is basically working out, or how I've worked out at least, vehicle depreciation costs or vehicle replacement costs. I do feel it's really important, this video, and it's important to really state why here. Anyone who watches Peter Coe's channel, he's done a video on busy fools and the conveyor belt of busy fools. So there is that saying, because I've been in the industry for like 9 months now or whatever, there's plenty of work for busy fools, and I think that's not just being a self-employed courier, owner driver courier, probably most industries. Busy fools are people who just basically undercut. There's a going rate for jobs. They undercut just to keep busy, assuming if they're busy they must be doing well. But the idea isn't to be busy. The idea is to run a decent business and earn a decent wage. Otherwise, why would you bother doing it? You just get a job working for somebody else for a lot less hassle. So busy fools generally will price the job too low, get plenty of work, run around, and then in the future when they need to replace their van, or they have a major cost on a van, a major breakdown, realise they haven't got the money to fix it, and that's it, they can't fix it. Obviously, another part of this is, even if you're earning the right rates, you need to be putting aside enough money for in the future replacing your van, or any major costs that come up really. But mainly replacing your van, you need to be putting money aside so you can stay in the game. And then the conveyor belt of fools is basically you have these people who are pricing too low, busy fools as they're called. Then they get to that point where they can't replace their vehicle, they drop off the CX or drop out the industry, wherever you get your work from, and then as they do that, somebody else comes along, joins with a bit of money behind them to get a van or whatever, get a vehicle, and then they're there for a while until the same happens to them, and there's always that turnover of people. So there is a going rate. Pete's done videos on the going rate and stuff, so go and check out his channel. There's points of me going over them. So it's really important to state that. So people who've been in the industry a long time know what a decent rate is on top of the finances. So I thought in this video I'd just share what my costs are. I think I'm doing okay at the moment. Not fantastic, but it's middle of COVID and lockdown and stuff, so getting by. So that's the video basically. In the next one I'm going to do all my other costs, so that'll include things like servicing, general wear and tear items like tyres and brakes and that kind of thing, projected costs for that, to work out my total variable cost, which is my per mile cost. So I'm getting there slowly. I've got a good idea in my head. I need to finally work it out properly before I do the video. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this. Any comments, please add them below. Any tips, anything you think I've missed, same again below please. So thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of the video. Cheers.